Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's your boy OCD Trucker, and I'm coming at y'all today with my first OCD Trucker video. This is my first video, and shooting this over at my house, just kind of kicking it outside right now. And just wanted to talk a little bit about living with OCD and hyperawareness and somatic OCD theme. Alright, I'm really just putting this channel and this video out here in hopes that, you know, my experience, my insight could helpfully shed some light on your own personal situation. I know that when I first, I know that it seems like it took me a while to kind of figure out what was really going on with me. And with hyperawareness and somatic OCD, there's not a lot of information on that. So I just kind of wanted to, so let me jump right into it. So I've suffered with OCD for a few years. Much of that time was undiagnosed. The first OCD theme that I had was health anxiety. I don't know if I would call it health anxiety, but I was obsessive about my health. I thought I had different diseases and stuff like that. So I guess you would consider that health anxiety. That kind of OCD where I would constantly check and try and figure out if I had this disease or this side effect from some supplement or vitamin that I had been taking. And because a lot of that was based in some sort of genuine worry, that went unchecked for a good while. And that's really where I kind of dug into my pit of OCD. And eventually my OCD even got worse. My theme changed into sexual related OCD. Anything to do with sex, homosexuality, it was really crazy images, and that's kind of like when I really got deep into OCD. And it was right around at that time that I figured out kind of what was going on with me. And when I was researching, I was refusing the thoughts to ruminate and obsess over the sexual thoughts, and I was at an extremely high point of anxiety whenever I read about hyperawareness OCD, and that freaked me the fuck out, and I freaked the fuck out about over that. And yeah, so my theme changed, and that became my main theme, and the sexual stuff became like a secondary thing, which in some ways I don't really know. To me, this shit is just all bad. So what is hyperawareness somatic OCD? So hyperawareness somatic OCD is where your mind obsesses about automatic functions that your body has taken place. So obsessing about your blinking, obsessing about swallowing, obsessing about breathing. These are the three main ones that my brain obsessed about. Also just a hyper-awareness about anything and everything, like me holding this hand. I could have a hyper-awareness about this, a hyper-awareness about, sensations or anything that's going on. Sometimes hyper-awareness, the reason I say hyper-awareness, because a lot of times you feel the awareness more than you feel the thought. And so you might have this awareness, like for instance, I'd also have, like as I've gotten a lot better, the blinking, the swallowing, and the breathing kind of went away, and some weird ass obsessions about my teeth and my mouth have been like my latest obsessions. But so it can really hyper-awareness about any part of your body or anything that's really going on. It's really important to note that hyper-awareness is something that is just common in anxiety in general. So unfortunately, this kind of theme kind of feeds off itself really well. Having a lot of anxiety is, having a lot of anxiety is going to make you be hyper aware of your body in general. So having a theme that doubles down on that, I think, is really tricky and really difficult. And I think that it can make it a little bit trickier, a little bit more difficult to overcome if you're constantly hyper aware of everything that's going on with your body, and the anxiety is producing more and more odd things going on with your body, a lot of muscle tension and weird shit. So you kind of see how that can kind of like, it can kind of, your anxiety itself becomes something, it's a bad situation. So So yeah, I mean, that's what hyper awareness or somatic OCD is. It's being hyper aware and of your bodily functions. I've read about people that are hyper aware of their bladders. I mean, you can really be hyper aware of anything. And because there is a physical component to this, like blinking, swallowing, or breathing, it's easy to get tripped up. And that's why it freaked me out so much when I first got it. It's kind of easy to get tripped out because not only do you have to deny the thought and the awareness, but sometimes you also have urges and stuff like this. Like, how about an urge to swallow? You may have images too of different parts of your body, just weird shit going through your head. And it can be difficult, like with the urges. A lot of people try and control their breathing or try and control their swallowing or control their blinking. And it can be very difficult. It can seem a little bit more tricky than a typical OCD theme, other OCD themes. So let me go ahead and I will tell you how I've made a lot of progress on it. Step one is that you have got to disengage from this awareness, these urges, these sensations. I'm sure if you've been doing any type of real research into obsessive compulsive disorder and recovering from this disorder, then you know that you have to learn to accept these thoughts, feelings, sensations, images, whatever it is that you don't like, and you got to kind of live with them, live parallel to them. That is the only way. That is the number one thing that you have to do. You can do anything else in the world. If you do not learn to accept what's going on in your mind and in your body and just completely give up control, you will not get better, no matter what your diet is, no matter what medication that you take, no matter what supplements that you take. I'm not saying that these things cannot offset or help, but these things are not the cure. The cure is acceptance. So you have to learn to slowly, learn to accept these things that you can't control. A great way to start with that is exposure and response, ERP, which is another thing. Like I said, all this stuff that I'm talking about is stuff that you can treat any OCD theme with. OCD is OCD, but exposure and response prevention is really a great way to start. I recommend doing this in a place like this, calm. When I started off my OCD journey, I made a lot of different mistakes. So one of the things was trying to do too much too quick, because I just kind of have, I don't know if that's typical, maybe it's not so typical OCD people. Once I realized what the fuck was going on, I wanted to get rid of it. And I kind of did a little too much too quickly. So if you have a very severe, if you have it severe, like you're getting the thought nonstop all day, every day, and you're extremely anxious, you can't focus, like you feel like you are just losing your mind, and you've had OCD for a while, definitely, start to expose yourself to these things gradually. Don't go all in. You can make good progress day after day after day, but no, I wouldn't recommend necessarily just stopping all in one day. I would at least spread it out over a couple weeks, and make sure you're in a calm place when you do it. You want to start to learn how to expose yourself to these types of fears and thoughts. For instance, whenever I had this urge to swallow, this urge was like really intense, and I was doing this while I was working. I kind of have like a pretty high pressure job, and that was very difficult. I had the stress of my job, and then it just made it even worse. I had this urge to swallow, and refusing that urge was very painful. It made me very anxious and very stressed out. So that's just one example. So first, learn that the key is acceptance. Second, learn that you need to start to do exposure and response prevention slowly. You need to continue to do this acceptance and exposure response. This is going to be your bread and butter. A few other things that I highly recommend, because these are the things that really hindered me in a lot of my recovery progress. And I'm not saying that I'm by any means cured, but I'm in a much better place today than I was, when 6-7 months ago. And that is, you got to get your stress levels down. You got to get your cortisol levels down, because you're already in a state of fight or flight. So you got to get your, if you're drinking caffeine, you need to cut that out. Not because you should not be, you shouldn't be afraid of coffee, but you need to just try and lower your adrenaline levels. You need to, really look at your life and see, really realize the severity of your situation. This is another thing that I didn't realize. I'm talking about people that have these thoughts coming all the time, and it's been coming. You've had OCD for a while. It's gotten really out of control. You need to look at your life. You need to look at the severity of your situation. And you probably, you possibly need to take some time off. You possibly need to scale back on your work, or you need to take some time off, or you need to talk to your boss, or you need to figure out the things that you need to do to put yourself in the best situation possible to recover as quick as possible. One of the mistakes that I made was when I realized that I had OCD, it was at a really stressful point in my life, and I just continued to just like work my ass off, and that really paid the price in regards to like recovery. In fact, in some ways I got worse. So if you have a really high stressful job, you're in a very stressful situation, take a step back and say, hey, I got a serious fucking problem. It's not going to go away overnight. If you've had OCD for any length of time, it's not going to go away in a day or a week or even a month. It's probably going to be months. You know what I mean? Months. I think from a lot of the people that I listen to that I think really know what they're talking about, I would say I would set aside, if you have a pretty good dose of OCD, probably going to take 6 months. That's if you're doing everything properly, to get rid of it. That's if you're doing all the recovery work and everything. And the first 3 months are probably going to be really rough. So, get your cortisol levels down, get your stress levels down, get ready to really work on this recovery. In regards to, I think another thing, I just add this, I'm not really big into medication per se, although I definitely, if you're not, there is a place for medication. I'm not really here to advise on that. I think medication is something you should really see as a tool to help you recover quicker. But I will tell you, I've been prescribed medication and it doesn't really do anything for me. The results with medication for OCD is very low, and usually for it to be effective, it's a pretty high dose of SSRIs that you got to get on, and the high dose like SSRIs they're going to be harder to come off of, and they're going to have a lot more side effects. So, just something to think about. But I would say, definitely look into taking a good multivitamin during this period of time. It's important. You got so much stress going on. You know what I mean? Get yourself a decent multivitamin. Take that shit. And I'm not saying that's going to cure. That's even going to take the edge off. But what I'm saying is, you want to be giving your body the proper stuff to recover. You're taxing your adrenals. Your whole body's in a state of fight or flight. So you want to nourish it. Stay hydrated. Try your best to get good sleep and stuff like that. So, acceptance, exposure and response, lowering your stress levels, take a multivitamin. I also recommend, meditation, which is very close to ERP, really. If you think about it, you just learn to sit there and accept things. And, I hope that, this video really helps you all. Living with OCD is a bitch. I've lived with it for a couple years. And it's super nasty. It's really took a heavy toll on me physically, emotionally, my life. It's terrible. So I can relate to wherever you're going through. Things will get better, but things will take time. And you really have no choice but to move forward. Because if you have OCD, it will not get better on its own. Time will not do anything. In fact, it will just get worse with time. It will spread. It will just get worse. You'll become more anxious. It can only really get worse if you're not taking the proper steps to get better. So anyways, like, share, comment, subscribe. I'm not saying, if you leave a comment, chances are I'll get back to you. And I hope that this video helps you out. Be easy, y'all.